I'm Tora Northman.
And I'm Nicole Mclaughlin, and we are here at Soho celebrating the launch of my Reebok shoe.
First of all, thank you all so much for coming. Today I am here with the Nicole Mclaughlin, and we are celebrating. Woo! Yeah, look it up. We are celebrating her collaboration with Reebok. So to kick it off, my name is Tora, and Nicole, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having us. This is crazy. I literally never would have thought in my wildest dreams that this would be happening. I'm Nicole Mclaughlin, and I'm a designer, more specifically upcycling designer, but I do all different types of designs. And yeah, this is my first sneaker that I've ever designed that has come out and is for sale, so I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and we're also excited to actually get an up-close look at it. I mean, I've been playing around with it all day, and it has all of these really fun elements that I'm sure you will be able to experience. So let's get started. Where did your upcycling career kind of start? Take us way back.
Yeah, so if you don't know, I will tell you, I used to work for Reebok, and I started as an intern there back in 2016. And it was honestly, I couldn't even believe that I got that internship. I went to school and studied digital media technology, and I got hired as a graphic design intern. I had no experience doing any type of product or even really graphic design. So they took a chance on me then, and then they did that again in a different way. But I spent a good 4 years working there, first job out of college, and learned so much. I got such an appreciation for history and the archive. Reebok has an amazing heritage and an amazing history that I recommend everybody looking into. But it was really during that time that I also started to see the other side of the fashion industry, which was a bit scary and a bit wasteful. And I don't think us as consumers always get a chance to look behind the curtain. And so I use that as an opportunity to understand just, how much this problem is impacting us. And the upcycling started by me just taking boxes of samples and scraps that were getting thrown away. And I was like dumpster diving in the office and just taking things home with me, not knowing what I was going to use it for, but learned how to sew and taught myself how to make stuff, just starting with like hot glue guns and hand sewing. And from there, I kept seeing such amazing shapes and continued to build on it.
I mean, that's amazing. And when did you start posting it on social media?
I'd say like some of the early projects back in like 2017, and they're upcycled projects, but I don't know, I didn't have no one was watching, and so I would post them, and maybe like one or two people like reposted it, and it got a little bit of attention. At the time, I was so scared. I was like, who are these people? Everyone's liking this picture. Like, what do I do from now? Like, do I keep doing this? Like, do I kind of go back and rethink my career? Like, how does this work? And so I moonlighted. I did both for a while. I worked my day job, and I was doing this on the side and posting on Instagram, and then eventually it was enough traction to go full time.
And when was it that you really noticed, like, oh shit, people are watching?
End of 2018 going into 2019, and that was the time that I decided to leave Reebok and go full time. I think I had enough, work at least for the rest of the year. And this was a big decision to leave. It was for anyone that works within a company that wants to go freelance. That was a really scary moment because in the US, your healthcare is tied to your job. And when I told my parents, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go freelance, they freaked out. And they're like, you have a 401k and you're going to lose it all. And I was like, you know what, I'll figure it out. And I had enough to get me through the rest of the year for projects-wise. And I was like, I'll figure it out after that. And it just sort of worked out, I guess.
I mean, yeah, definitely worked out considering we're sitting here today. What's been your most viral creation so far?
Well, back then, it started a lot with the Carhartt stuff, and that's when I knew the streetwear space was for me. I didn't grow up being within sneakers or sneaker culture in any way. I just kind of got into it through working at Reebok. But yeah, to the Carhartt stuff always hits a little bit different. I think that also made me realize what people can relate to all around the world, whatever your background is. And so I find that really interesting. And then anytime I use food, like bread, I've made like a bra out of croissants before and stuff, and so people tend to really like that. Which I like those projects too because the non-traditional materials always push me the hardest because I can't sew it and I don't want to glue it because I don't want to waste any food. So I found ways of like using fishing line and weird like wood structures inside of bread, and then I can take it all out and then eat it after. So that's perfect.
We were chatting a little bit earlier today, and you actually told me something that almost surprised me, and that is that you take your creations apart and then reuse them for other projects. So do you have one a part that was your favorite that you've then taken apart and created something else from?
Yeah, that's something that I started doing in the beginning out of necessity because I didn't have, a pool of resources or endless stream of money. So I would go to, once I ran out of my resources at Reebok, once I left after I stopped taking everything out of the trash, I would go to thrift stores and I would try to buy stuff that I could maximize. So whether that was me buying it to wear for a while and then turn that into a project. And then so I would be making a project, I would take a picture of it, and that's honestly what I now consider to be the final piece. I don't have this like extensive archive of all my stuff. And I took it apart because I would need it for other things. I was like, oh, I really need that purple. And so I'd say probably the fleeces that I've used have been through the most. They've been linings, they've been like jackets, pants, and it's funny because every project gets like a little bit smaller. So it might start as like a jumpsuit and then turn into like the lining of a shoe. So it's really cool to see the transition. And also it pushes me to realize how much life material actually has, and we're so easily just ready to discard it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing for everyone to keep in mind, not just with clothes, but with everything, stuff you have in your kitchen. It's just a good mentality to have. So going back to Reebok, you worked at Reebok, now you have your own shoe with Reebok. What did that journey kind of look like? How did they approach you? Where did you get started with the shoe?
Yeah, so this was a little bit of a COVID project that came about, and the Geo Mid was presented to me, and it was a new model, and I just fell in love with it. Honestly, I just thought it was so interesting, a hybrid of a classic shoe that I love, which is the Club C, with a modern take, and so I was like, I immediately knew I could put my own spin on it. Which I very much did because there are functional pockets on it, so you can put your trail snacks, and there is reflective binding, so there's definitely a lot of functional elements. Has a mud guard, so keeping trail in mind when creating it. But I mean, the Reebok team really pushed it through. Some of them are here, so thank you. But they really made this happen, and it was, during COVID and creating things during that time, it was definitely a slower process, and they were super helpful along the way of keeping me, updated and everything. So yeah, it was pretty wild also because I was able to apply so many of the things that I learned while working at the company into this project. So understanding timelines, working with development, understanding factory needs and all that kind of stuff. I don't think I would have had any idea of what it takes to create something like this if I hadn't worked there.
I mean, it's a crazy full circle moment. And I think also looking at the shoe, there's so much of you in the shoe. It's a great rhyme. But so talk us through the inspiration behind it. I know you love the outdoors, the trail element is there, but where did that kind of come from?
Yeah, so I mean, trail and just being outside has been my whole life. Like I said, I'm not like a sneaker city kid. I grew up in New Jersey, like outside of New York, but spent a lot of time outside, and I really love and appreciate nature. Actually moved to Colorado recently, so really enjoying just the landscape that I have there. But I really love functionality, and the thing that I love so much about the outdoors and the clothing that is associated with outdoors is the functional element. So you think of a jacket that has, hood, and it could be down, and it has zippers and reflective, and I just love all those details. And those are the pieces that I thrift in a store because they have the most elements. So like I said, I'm going to try to pull as much as I can off of it without having to buy new. So it always ends up being outdoor pieces, and I spend a lot of time outside. I rock climb, that's my favorite thing. I do snowboard and do a lot of outdoor activities. So that was really the top of mind when creating this shoe. Another inspo for it was this shoe that came out in the 90s called the Etna. And it was very much a trail shoe, and I think a lot of heritage brands were dabbling within the trail space within the 80s and 90s. I actually have in the back, there's like a little display there. Reebok made rock climbing shoes at one point, so taking so much inspiration from some of the history was really important.
Speaking of history, do you remember your first ever pair of Reeboks?
Yeah, it's kind of, it was like a required gym shoe that we had to have for school. They weren't probably the cutest on me at the time, but I'm very thankful for that period in my life.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we said this earlier, but they're such a classic brand. I feel like I've always had at least one pair of Reeboks in my personal rotation. It's just omnipresent, you know? I feel like most people have at least had one pair of Reeboks, especially if you're into trainers.
Definitely. And London, like what a strong presence. And that's why I started to really understand like the history of the brand like through the experience of people within Europe, but specifically London.
Yeah, for sure. So you said you've never really been super into sneakers and streetwear. That wasn't really where you got started. So what would you describe your style as?
Very functional. I would say, I don't want to say the word cheap, but I am always looking for a bargain. So I try my best to, you know, source things vintage, or a lot of things get given to me to upcycle, and then I'll wear it for a little bit and then make a project. But I'd say very functional. I like to be comfortable. That's a huge part of my everyday life. If I'm sitting at a sewing machine all day, I want to feel cozy. But yeah, I really just love those. I love pockets. I really do. And like, as you can tell from the shoe, there's like multiple pockets on the shoe. I like to be able to store things. And they don't put enough pockets in women's clothing. And I think that's a shame. So, period.
And do you ever wear your actual creations out in the real world? Like the croissant bra? Does that ever get a little outing?
That was the butteriest project ever. I took it off and I was like, I was slippery from it. No, I don't. I think I don't know. It feels so much like art in that way. It's so functional. Like some people look at my work and they're like, "Oh, that would never work." And I'm like, you'd be surprised. It does function. It might not last you an entire day, but it will get you through some of it. But no, and I think it's more of the mentality of like, I'm gonna take it apart after, and I really just keep that mindset for every piece. It's very rare for me to make something that I feel like I can't take apart. I almost have this mentality where it's like, I've made it once before. If I have to make it again, I'll just make it again. It might not look exactly the same, but I'll find the materials or I'll dig them out of the box and I'll do it again.
And considering you've had so many amazing creations now, I mean, if you follow Nicole on any social media, you will have seen some crazy stuff, Harry Bow shorts, sauce packets, croissant bras, you know. Have you ever done a project where something's gone really wrong? Have you had some terrible ideas?
Yeah, I've had really, really bad ideas. A lot of them were during COVID because I just had so much time at home to myself. And I also didn't have the resources that I normally had, so I wasn't able to go to thrift stores. So I was getting really, really just resourceful with the stuff I had. Without getting into too much detail, I basically lit myself on fire. So I'm thankfully here and good, but I learned a really good lesson, and the lesson that I think most first graders learn is that like fire is dangerous. So
that is a good learning experience, great takeaway, I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, upcycling is tough work. We did a workshop this morning. I went away with a little cut in my finger.
That was really disappointing for me. I always make sure that everyone is safe, and then Tora comes up and her whole finger is bloody, and I was like, no.
I was gonna say that was a me problem, but so if you were to give someone who wants to start upcycling some advice, what would that be?
I would say look in your closet, look in your house. There's just so much there. There's so much to use. There are things that you keep in your closet for so long and you don't know why, but you're like attached to them. Make it work again. You know, if you used to wear it and it doesn't maybe fit you the same way, or it's not in style anymore, make it work. Make it a part of your everyday, collection. I think that has helped me a lot with also just my purchasing choices too. Is like, I want to buy something that's going to last me a long time, something that's versatile, and I kind of curate my closet around that. But I think in terms of upcycling, just, you have to start somewhere, and it could be very small. I always say you never have to take it to this extreme. You don't have to start, making bread gloves. Like, it doesn't have to be that deep, but I think if you want to try to hem something, watch a YouTube video. You can do a lot of these things by hand, and there's so many free resources for that online. But then, just take a look at what you have. I think it's pretty easy. I know there's a lot of ladies here, and this is a women's shoot, but cropping things. There's always like that weird extra piece of fabric. There's so many things you could do with that. I've done like headbands and scrunchies and, made little pouch bags. I've used that for shoes, and it's been really interesting to just kind of pay attention to those details when I'm making stuff. But yeah, try it. Try upcycling. You'll really like it, I think.
I feel like I desperately need to do that because I let my trousers hang and drag in the dirt, which is not ideal. And if there are any tools that you would recommend, like top 3 tools, what would they be?
My top 3 tools. I mean, I use, I guess you call it scalpel, or X-Acto knife for me. That's like my number 1 tool. I use that for everything, and that's also what you probably injured yourself on today. So when you use it, be very careful. But I think that also it just gives you that flexibility of like taking out seams and stuff. A seam ripper would work, but there's something about using that blade is really like, I don't know, it's very like therapeutic to lift up stitches on an old garment and be able to do that. I mean, YouTube University is helpful. That's a tool for me. I learn a lot of different types of techniques and sewing techniques just from watching online. And what else? I mean, all the essentials. You'll need scissors and sewing thread, needles, all that kind of stuff. But I really just encourage people to get into making stuff. I think we buy our clothes and we forget that there's a human element to it because everything's, it's made in a factory, and we sort of lose sight of like, those are real people making your clothes. And the more that you get involved in these things, you start to realize like, this isn't easy to make. Like Tora made stuff in a workshop today, and the people that were there creating things realized like, it's really not that easy to create something with your hands. And so we should appreciate the stuff that we have a bit more because of that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to be honest, my sewing was pretty rough, but still, like, it's you can make something.
Yeah.
It didn't look the best, but I feel like with a little bit of practice, maybe I can get there one day. Maybe you have to wash your back.
Yeah, it's coming from me. I feel like it's so possible, and it really takes time. And that's the other thing. If you are looking to make stuff, don't expect to go in like come out with this beautiful, perfect piece. I didn't have that mentality when I first started, and I still don't, honestly. Every project for me is a new experience. I use so many weird materials, I never know what I'm gonna get. And just think of it as a prototype, and you will see something, hopefully, and you'll be able to take that and refine it and get better and understand just how things are made and the construction behind it.
Yeah. So with the technique of upcycling, how do you think it's going to play a bigger role for brands and companies moving forward?
I hope to see a lot more of it, and that's been really the goal for me and my work is just trying to connect with companies. And after going freelance, I started to realize this industry needs a lot of support and a lot of help in this space. And so upcycling can be done at scale, but it's not cheap and it's not easy. And I'd say responsibility is the first step. So brands often make a lot of stuff and then you buy it and they're like, this is your fault, like this is your responsibility, now you have to figure out what to do with it. And I think if more brands implemented this take back program or repairs program, which brands are starting to do now, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of that. Think like Patagonia, Rework, or Reworn, to be able to keep that product going, keep its life going, and make it circular. So if you start to teach brands, which I'm trying, that this material is a resource, this is money that you're throwing away. And by seeing some of my pieces, I feel like they're like, oh, we didn't even think of doing that with our product. And seeing now on Instagram and on TikTok, people being able to do this at home, like these companies should be scared. They should be really scared that there's a new wave of designers and consumers, and they should be paying way more attention to this. But I really am hopeful that there'll be better and more streamlined ways of making it possible.
Yeah, I think sustainability is so key. It should be something that we talk about a lot more, and I think upcycling will be a huge part of that. If you had like one thing that everyone should take away leaving here tonight in terms of how they can be a little bit more sustainable in like their day to day, what would it be?
Pay attention. that's the best thing that I could say is like once I started to open my eyes, doing research on the brands that I work with personally, but also the brands that I support. I think that was a huge moment for me. And caring about these things. If you are passionate about it, then speak up about it. And this isn't a lot of the time the blame is put on the consumers, and I get really frustrated about that because we're not the ones putting these laws in place, and we're not the ones at these companies making these decisions. But we can affect brands, with our money. And I also just think, more people should get involved in designing and upcycling. And I would love to be a resource for you if you do have any thoughts or questions on it. And I think that there's going to be a good future in it.
Yeah, definitely. And before we kind of wrap up, I want to talk a little bit more about the shoot, the Club C Geomid, and just women in general having sneaker collaborations. Because for me, I got started in this industry, 5+ years now, and it did not look anywhere close to where it is today. There were a lot less women, and honestly, like every single shoe you were looking at only came in men's sizing. Like there were so few women that actually had a voice, let alone an actual collaboration. So one, congratulations. It's a huge step, not just for you, but for women in streetwear and sneakers in general. And I think it's a very important one. I just want to say that. And I think for you, how have you found it? Obviously working at Reebok and kind of growing up or growing your career through the streetwear lens.
Yeah, and thank you. That means a lot to me. There's not enough women in this space, period. Like, inclusivity in general within streetwear, it's very male-dominated and a lot of male decisions being made, and that was something I learned while working within. So this feels like a win, but it feels like a start, and I really hope to see a lot more women getting the space to be able to create these things, and that's up to me too, to be able to give the platform and be able to bring more people and try to find those people. And you have to do work. You have to do work to find the people that are making changes and are doing really cool and interesting stuff. Because there's a lot of people out there, and there's only more and more space for people. This is never a competition, and that's something that I've learned as a woman in this industry. We welcome people in, and guys tend to push people out of the way. Not all, but I definitely have experienced a bit of that, and so I think just continue to create a welcoming environment. So more women in sneakers, please.
Period. It's already hard enough as it is, so let's support each other, let's lift each other up, let's share our knowledge. I think that is the key takeaway for all the women in the room tonight. For the men as well, but you already kind of have it easy. Anyway, I think that is pretty much all I've got for you, but I want to say that Nicole will be around for the rest of the evening to answer any questions, have some chats individually with you guys. So will I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Everyone should know about Tora. She has a really cool background as well, and she is the head of TikTok for High Snobiety, which is a really insane job, and also TikTok is the most amazing platform in the sense of consuming content, so also feel free to ask Tora many questions as well. But
for sure, anything you need to know about TikTok, I'm your dad.
But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Come up and chat, and thanks for coming. Thank you, and Reebok. This was amazing.
Thank you so much. Shout out to Nicole.